I was the chief economist for Duboneski.
Oh, you were?
He passed away in 2005.
Yeah, I've read all his books. Sure.
If you allow me to acknowledge you, in my opinion, you are being what Jack Kemp and Jude would call the man at the margin. You could be, during the next generation, the most important Republican. Easily, quite easily. I'm between New York and Chicago.
Okay.
And it's a privilege to be here with all of you. My question relates to the current economic recession because that creates the context for today's healthcare debate. Certainly, if Americans were much wealthier, more Americans could afford health insurance. So my question for you is, the conventional belief is that the housing slowdown sparked the current economic recession. Often overlooked is the fact that the Federal Reserve raised interest rates between 2004 and 2006 and maintained an inverted yield curve through 2007 to intentionally slow the economy.
Amen.
And they did it. Now, for the sake of brevity, there are a lot more details.
The Fed funds rate from 03 to 05, I would argue, was artificially low, and their actions afterwards were sort of more or less poorly timed off that up.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. There is excess liquidity in the system when we have inflationary pressures. My question is, why is there a silence generally amongst Republicans about Fed policy that seeks to manipulate economic growth?
That's a good question. Now, that's not necessarily healthcare, but let me give you a quick answer. I did most of my academic work on this, monetary policy. I have a bill that amends the law that creates the Fed, the governor's Fed called Humphrey-Hawkins, which would get the Fed clean up transparency at the Fed so we can see what they're doing. But more importantly, get them on price stability. They have a dual mandate right now, which totally conflicts with one another. I would put the Fed to focus solely on price stability and only price stability. It's the only agency in our government that has the goal to do that has the charge to do that. And I believe we are on this Fed-induced roller coaster, where we're creating bubbles, then we're bursting bubbles, creating bubbles, bursting bubbles, creating bubbles, bursting bubbles, and the collateral damage to our economy, to our currency, to people's savings, especially if we end up getting inflation, is devastating. And we need to get the Federal Reserve back on an even keel where they're predictable, where they're transparent, and where their focus is not micromanaging and manipulating the economy in the short run, but preserving the precursor for long-run economic growth and development, which is price stability. And so that's what the Fed's goal ought to be, and that ought to be enshrined in the charter and the law that governs it. Now, we're getting a little off the healthcare subject here. I obviously have strong opinions about how the Federal Reserve works or doesn't. But you want to just one quick closing, and then we'll go to this.
The reason I ask is, before 1971, the Fed was mandated to maintain a stable dollar gold price. And the economy boomed. It was the good old times. We had one breadwinner per family. Families could afford health insurance back then. Why is the Republican Party generally silent about the second half of the Reagan Revolution?
Yeah.
Which is to make the dollar as good as gold.
Right. So I believe my personal preference is to have a commodity standard. I would do a basket of hard commodities, not a single commodity. But I believe in a fixed price rule, and I think we ought to anchor our currency to a basket of commodities. To me, that is what would make the dollar as good as gold and would give us the kind of predictability, and it would keep our currency status as the world's reserve currency, but more importantly, it would keep our currency as a reliable store of value backed up by a basket of commodities. That, to me, is the best way to conduct a monetary policy. This is sort of a university conversation here, so I don't want to, but that's the point. So, yeah, thanks. The guy in the